if y'all never saw me again, if I was hit by a bus on the way home, I would say, do your thing. Start with your story. Wait for no one. Be beholden to no one. Be waiting for no one. The only person you're waiting for is yourself. There's no excuses now. None. It doesn't cost you anything. You can even take a headshot with your phone if you wanted to. If you have a dream, go for it. You don't want to be looking back. I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, what a crazy ass journey. Just crazy. But I have zero regrets. I worked my ass off. I had fun. I made incredible friends and incredible relationships and did it on my time slot. You don't want to look back going, I wonder what would have happened if. There doesn't have to be, I wonder what would have happened if, because you can do your own thing. You can make your own TV series, your own web series. You can do anything. All it takes is one person to see it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Sam Dever Podcast, episode 103. In this episode, I speak with master acting teacher and private coach, Holly Gagnier. I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time, and it did not disappoint. Holly was incredible, and I cannot wait for you to check out this conversation. To watch this podcast, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@thesamdeverpodcast. To listen, be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Here's my conversation with Holly. Well, Holly Gagnier, welcome to the Sam Dever Podcast.
Finally! Sam, it took you so long to have me. I'm watching all my friends come. I feel like the kid on the team that never got picked. So I'm so excited.
Well, we had to save one of the best. For I don't want to call it the last because we hope to continue doing this.
I'm teasing you. I'm excited to be here. This is fun.
Yeah. No, I saw you. What was it? Your last? Oh, yes. How to Fight Loneliness.
That was our most recent
spectacular, by
play.
the way. Spectacular.
Thank
Kudos to you and everyone involved in that.
Yeah, I think it's the best play we've ever had up. Especially the last few, they really kind of found their rhythm, and the last few that we did the last one we did was really some of the most extraordinary acting that I'd ever seen at the school, or anywhere really. They were just so dialed in, and that was an interesting play because it's Neil Butte. The rights aren't available. And when I decided I wanted to put it up, I went to pull the rights and they weren't around. So I had my manager, went on IMDb Pro, found out who his reps were, and my manager contacted his agent, his lit agent at Gersh, and said, look, this actress, she's done a lot of stuff. She coaches a ton of your clients. I coach a bunch of people at Gersh. And she said, do you want to, she's interested in putting up this Neil Butte play. And they said, well, the rights to that play, it's not put up. It's never been put up. He only had it done once when he wrote it. So they sent me like this questionnaire that I filled out about what else had I directed, what's my background, what's my training, who were the actors. Fortunately, Caitlin McMullen just finished a huge storyline on General Hospital that was a cancer storyline that they did actually in real time. So it was over the course of a year, and the whole storyline was about organ and stem cell donation. And so I was able to talk about Jim and Lincoln and Katie and myself and the school and the school's reputation. And so then I got through that part, and then he wanted to talk to me. And I was like, oh God, I was so nervous. It's like, don't say something stupid. I was just shaking on the phone. And we spoke for a while. And then he wanted to speak to me again the next day. And that was a really intense conversation with a lot of, he realized that I really understood what it was about. And gave me his blessing and let me continue to call him and email him with questions about certain elements of the play. Like, do you think this character knew this or knows that? Or, um, so he was really a resource because as a director, you're interpreting it as you think is going to be the strongest, but it's not necessarily the author's intention. So to be able to actually speak to him and, get inside of his head about the characters was like a gift. And I don't usually see all the shows that I direct. Once I'm done, it's kind of like I'm done, but I was at all of them except one when I had COVID. And I just every time there was just something else about it, that I didn't notice the first time. It's really and he didn't write it to be put up. It's long. It's the scenes take place in real time. They're not in play or movie time where we condense this conversation because people will get bored. I mean, he had asked me, are we doing an intermission and where do we even put the intermission? And that was something we had to decide when we had a little test audience. Do we even do one? But it's not the kind of play that if you have to use the restroom, you want to sit there and be like, oh, I don't want, you want everyone's full attention because it's so much information is put in it. But I just love the fact that he wrote his play, what he wanted it to be, and we did not think, oh, we need to rush. Not a single person said to me, and it's a long play, and no one said, oh my gosh, this is so long. Nobody, people found it riveting. Jim Perrick is next level.
Yeah.
He's really next level.
He was so fun to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, they all were, but that was my first time getting to see Jim live.
You didn't get to see him when I directed Jim and Lincoln in Burn This years ago, and it was extraordinary. I mean, he was great then. He has his 20 years under his belt. You know what I mean? And it's not something actors understand until they see it before their own eyes and they themselves have lived it. Then we go, okay, I get what they mean. 10,000 hours, 20 years. When I first heard that, I was like, Sandy talked about that and I was like, I want to be doing it now, and it's marinating, it's seasoning. You can't think that you're going to put some seasoning on something and it's going to taste and be the way it is had you not let it really marinate and sit and settle. And actors have a hard time understanding that.
I thought it's very interesting. So you said that Katie had done something for General Hospital
for a solid year where her
knowing
character
that
had
this
cancer.
Play was coming up.
Not knowing.
Man, like you can't buy that.
No, when we had our first reading, it was so realized, all three of them already. And Neil was adamant that the woman look okay, pretty much be okay. Because if the characters, without giving too much away, looks like she's knocking on death's door, we don't have a story, So she had the perfect sensibilities for that role, really. I was so proud of her. I was proud of all three of them. I thought, really, we're going to be up again in end of October. Jim and Lincoln are both working right now, so we have to wait.
Okay. Well, this will come out before then. So you're doing it again.
We're doing it again.
Okay, as you should.
Yeah.
But
I mean, anyone that even thinks they want to be an actor should go watch that because that's a gold standard, in my opinion. It's so good, and every show has been different. That's been interesting.
And you are right. You don't want to miss any of it either because it's 3 scenes, right? There are three
long scenes.
3 long scenes.
That's it.
It's like you got to pay attention to all the
Yeah, there's
little things that
all
are
these
said here, or the
details
details, right?
and things that get hearkened to later again that
Yeah.
were said earlier, and you can't go, wait, what did I miss? You know?
And I won't give anything away, but you leave they're saying, whoa, whoa, I did not see that one,
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So great work.
Thank
And
you. I've loved working on it. I have 4 plays coming up in the next 8 weeks. 4 new plays
4?
coming out. Yeah.
Which ones are you doing?
Rabbit Hole, Boy's Life, You and I, and oh no, this is terrible. Oh, The Four of Us. The Four of Us. So yeah, so I'm trying to orchestrate all these actors and their schedules and what show's going to be a matinee, what show's going to be evening, because I think it works better when everything is in rep and you're not just doing things consecutively. You're like, let's go to Playhouse this weekend. That's how it was back when I was a student there. We had 3 studios. So we had we started with 1 and we ended up with 3. And at one point I was in 9 plays because we just had so many things going on. It was fantastic. 1 act, scene nights, Spoon River nights. It was nonstop. Mr. Carnegie directed all of us in class. It was a thrilling time at the school. Really thrilling. We all wanted to be like the group theater, and we had like a group of us, like 20 of us who were obsessed. We were literally obsessed. Me, Mark Pellegrino, Tony, Chris Kavanaugh, Lola. I mean, we just had this insane pool of really good people. It was so much fun.
And I definitely want to hear more about that. But even taking it back even more, you grew up out here.
I grew up here. I grew up a block away from where we are right now.
So I want to tell me the story of Holly Gagnier.
Well, in a nutshell,
start wherever you want.
In a nutshell, my dad was born in Montreal and my mom was from Connecticut. My dad was a cameraman in Canada for the BBC. And he wanted to come to Hollywood and become a cinematographer. And my mom was a professional dancer, actually, and missed being a Rockette by a quarter of an inch. And so she went to stenography school and ended up working for the United Nations in New York. She worked on the Nuremberg trials, really just brilliantly smart. So my dad went to New York and my mom was in New York and they met at a USO dance contest and neither one of them had a partner. And they were like, hey, Hugh's an incredible dancer. And they're like, Eleanor's an incredible dancer. So they were in the contest and they won. And my dad had to become a citizen. So they got married, found their way to San Diego first and then Los Angeles. And my dad had to start over again because A, he wasn't a citizen, and B, different union, different everything here. So he worked in the studios as a janitor. He did all sorts of stuff. And then finally found his way. He did all the Playhouse 90s. He did the Steve Allen show. This was all as a camera operator. He did major motion pictures. He did Chinatown, Cuckoo's Nest, Winning. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember. And then he did a ton of television. And then he did, Jack Nicholson asked him to, my dad had moved up to be director of photography, and Jack wanted, because the camera operator is like critical to your take, you know what I mean? So he asked my dad to step down and shoot 2 Jakes for him, and he paid the fee. You had to pay a fee if you step back down. And my dad did that. He did so many movies, and then he became a DP, and he did a ton of stuff as a DP, and then he did tons of television. He did Streets of San Francisco with Michael Douglas, who wanted my dad because my dad did Cuckoo's Nest. He did all those primetime soaps, Knots Landing and Dallas and all those shows because my dad made a handmade version of a ring light. He made the original ring light because he was shooting these women and they were all beautiful, but they needed to look like those women had to look like primetime soap opera women. So he made a light that went around his camera. I mean, he had major lighting, but he made this light that went around his camera lens, which is wild to think about because he could have
I
patented
was just
that
going
and
to say.
everything. I mean, he was just trying to make them look really pretty.
Wow.
So, yeah, he just was super handy and created this thing and it went around his lens. Um, and so when they moved here, we were here in the Valley and I went to school right behind you here at St. Charles. I had the nuns, which, scary, scary events. But I will say, I really do think that's where I got a lot of discipline, you know. And then I was a professional dancer from a very young age. My sister was in a company and I was like a protege. So they had me come in and by like 8 I was doing, you know, whenever there was a role for like a littler girl like Midsummer Night's Dream or whatever the ballet was, Nutcracker, I was doing all of that and was in this company for many years and at around 16 I was doing a ton of commercials, any commercial you saw with anybody dancing, Coca-Cola, you know, Ruffles have ridges, Lay's potato chips, you name it, kids in the cafeteria. I was in all of those, A&W root beer, milk. And that kind of segued me into getting some acting things. My commercial I was getting stuff that choreographers were hiring me that choreographers whose classes I was taking were hiring me for those commercials. And then I ended up getting a commercial agent. And she's like, you should, you know, there's all kinds of the first thing I ended up doing was an episode of Quincy. And it was gymnasts who were taking uppers to improve their performance. And I got it. I got the job. I was one of the gymnasts. And so she had submitted me on that. So she introduced me to a theatrical agent. So I was doing dance and acting. And one day I was at ballet class and I was in so much pain, just unfathomable pain, primarily my feet. And I just was like, I think I was 23 and I already had a whole career at that point. And it's like my body felt like I was 80 years old. I picked up my bag, I walked out and I never looked back. And then I just did acting. And that's kind of my story.
Wow. So you had a whole entertainment life leading up to
Prior.
acting. Yeah.
And my father being in the business, my parents did not want me to become an actress. And quite frankly, I didn't really want to become one. I would visit my dad at work. He did this great show called The White Shadow. And a lot of those guys went on to be huge directors. Kevin, what's his last name? He's a big director now. Kevin Smith? I can't remember. Anyway, all the guys that played the basketball players on that show went on, many of them went on to have great careers. And they'd always say, Holly, and they're like, you're not going to become an actress, right? And it was like, no, I'm still dancing. And I just, you know, I went to college. I thought I was going to be a doctor. I just never thought that this would have been the path. But when I started to get work, I thought, well, you're going to have to take classes and you're going to have to train. You know, it never occurred to me to not take class because as a dancer, you were in class you were training every single day, whether you were performing or not, or booking work or not, you had to train every day, period. It's a given. So I just applied all the exact same thing to acting.
And a quick pause just to recognize, I think it's interesting. I mean, because you grew up out here in it. Whereas
And
other
I
people
saw
from
my
across,
dad have work and not have work,
right?
and work
So you
and
got to
not work.
really understand the business side to it all, and
Yes.
it was work. Like you saw, like no, this is jobs. People do this for their jobs.
No, he's
Like,
leaving the house at 4 a.m.
Right.
It cost my parents their marriage. I mean, we never saw my dad, you know? I mean, it's work. It's work. It's not, even when I went to set, there's a lot of sitting around. I never looked at it as glamorous or, wow. It was every single person there, whether they were the lead of the show or craft service, was working their butt off. It's work.
So for you, it wasn't as much, oh, I'm going to be a Hollywood movie
No.
star. It's like, oh, well, okay, this is where the jobs are at. I might as well.
Yeah, I kept getting jobs. I was
Right.
going to college. I kept getting acting jobs. I opened an aerobic studio in Paris. I lived in Paris for 2 years trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Did I want to act, or did I want to pursue dance, or did I want to open a dance studio or go back to college and be a doctor? Like, because I had 1 year left of lower, just my regular degree. And I kept getting acting jobs. And finally I was kind of like, well, is the universe trying to tell me something? I mean, and I've had a love-hate relationship with it because it kind of found me, and the curtain was pulled back at a really young age. I never had the rose-colored glasses on and then got the stark reality when someone moves here or books their first gig. That didn't happen to me, especially because I came from the ballet world. I mean, oh my God, there's nothing more brutal. So the curtain had already been pulled back on the whole thing. And yet I still ventured in. It's like going into a house is possessed, and yet you still go in, But once I decided to do it, I was like, I'm going to do it. I worked. I'm hardly the best actor by no means. However, I worked really hard. Like I was a fiend about it. And I was directing and always in plays and always in classes. So, that was my nature. If you're going to do something, you've got to 1,000% do it. So
when you first got into it, what were the first steps when you go, okay, I'm going this route? Then what happened?
Well, this is such great trivia because I'm so much older probably than everyone you've had on. There was a man that was the universal, like on contract coach for all the contract players. And his name was Vincent Chase. So when you watch Entourage and the character's name is Vincent Chase, that show Entourage has so many little Easter eggs in there that unless you were around Hollywood back then, you wouldn't know. Vincent Chase taught everybody. Everybody went to Vincent Chase. My class had Michael Biehn and Joe Penny and Leanne Hunley. And I mean, everybody. It was a who's who. Everyone who was on TV at the time, they were all in the advanced class. And so you went to Vince, and that's pretty much where agents sent people. He was like the guy in town. And then as time went on, I found other classes, other teachers. I was with Milton at the Beverly Hills Playhouse. And I was working. I got, I did a bunch of episodic. I did a movie called Girls Just Want to Have Fun, like kind of a cult classic movie. I did a few movies. And then Days of Our Lives, I had a friend who, in my acting class at Vince, who was on Days of Our Lives. And her character got killed. And we looked very much alike. So she was going to have to go to work and just be a dead body. And her grandpa, who basically raised her, died. So she called me on the phone. She said, Holly, I have to go home, like help my family with everything. I'm just going to be a dead body. And we looked, everyone confused us for each other. She said, if the show says it's okay, can I tell them you'd be willing to be my dead body tomorrow? Now, bear in mind, I'd already done a lot of work at this point. And I was like, of course, I'm not doing anything tomorrow. I've never been on a soap opera set. This is going to be really interesting to see how it works. So the whole day at Days of Our Lives, dead body. We need the dead body to the set. Dead body, come on up. And not even Holly, I'm just dead body. But I watched, and back then, now most of the shows block, dress, and tape. Back then, you were on set all day long. So I was like, how the hell are we allowed to cuss?
Yes, you
Because
can.
it was like, how the fuck are these people remembering the amount of work in a day? I was stunned. I was stunned because you do an episode of a TV show and they're taking 7 to 9 days to shoot a 1-hour show. Daytime does a 1-hour show in a day. Just the call sheet alone was like pages and pages of scenes. So then they called me, the show called me again and said, one of the gals that was supposed to do an under 5 canceled last minute. Would you come do an under 5 for us? My agent was having a fit. You were a dead body. Now you're an under 5. You're doing guest spots. You just did a movie. This is not how it works. I'm like, you don't understand. I'm from the mentality of you take whatever work you get. I had to watch my dad do that. I had to watch other dancers do that. Watch the movie A Chorus Line. I mean, that's what the play is about, is if this is your passion, you're going to do whatever work you can in your passion. So then they called again. We have an under 5. I filled in again. Then they called me and said, we have a series regular we want you to audition for. It's like, yay, it paid off. I auditioned for the series regular. I get down to the wire. I don't get it. Another series regular audition, get down to the wire, don't get it. Bear in mind, this is over a course of like a year. And then they said, okay, we have a 3-day role. And I go in, I audition, and I get it. And it turned into 3 years, turned into a contract role. So you never know what's going to happen, right? But I ended up getting that. And I went straight from that to New York to One Life to Live. One Life to Live, when my contract was up at Days of Our Lives, they were like, we want you over on our show. So I went over and I was dying to live in New York. So picked up my bags and moved to New York.
Wow.
And then did another soap for 3 years.
How did you like New York compared to LA?
This is my home. New York, it was exciting, It's exciting. It's exhilarating. There's so much to do. And I was taking great classes there. And not that Vince and Milton weren't great, but I think I also had Peggy Fury here. I'm trying to think who were the hot teachers at the time. Everybody studied with everybody. You tried to do your best. But, there, New York had very little work at the time. Shows, it was films being filmed there and daytime. So the coolest thing about me being on that show is our executive producer was obsessed with Broadway actors. And so these Broadway actors would come in who were incredible. In Milo O'Shea and incredible actors who were film and theater geniuses would come in and do a judge for 2 weeks or do a role for a month. So at one point, Les Mis had just come out. He loved the show so much that he had one of the characters go into a coma and dream that she was in the Old West, and the entire cast of Les Mis was doing our show every single day. Colm Wilkinson, all these people. By day, we're doing our show as characters, and by night, going and doing Les Mis. It was talking to them, picking their brains. The woman that played my aunt had won a Tony on Broadway. The caliber of actors on that show was next level, because that was one of the few things that was available to do if you were living in New York and you wanted to do theater at night. So, I mean, it was the actors, the level of actors and the caliber of the actors, that was absolutely unparalleled. I learned so much. And I mean, especially with the people that came and did the show and the conversations we had. Adolf Fugard, I'm probably completely bastardizing his name. He wrote, a South African award-winning playwright, you know, wrote a million things. He came and did the show. And that's where I coined terrorist theater, because he looked at me one day. I was picking his brains. He had a show on Broadway at the time that he'd written with Kathy Bates starring in it. And Road to Perdition, maybe. And he looked at me, he goes, "This is insane." He said, "This is terrorist theater." He said, "This is as if you have opening night of a Broadway show every night, but you don't get any rehearsals." I said, "Yeah, that's how it feels." I mean, there's just so much people, if you're good on daytime, you're an incredible actor. That's why so many people, Alec Baldwin, Meg Ryan, Julianne Moore, Morgan Freeman, the Tommy Lee Jones. I mean, there's so many people. Bryan Cranston, who did years of daytime. It's incredible training, and it's the other actors. I mean, you some of the people are just so good. So in that sense, it was incredible. It was an education for me, as if I had gone to, I'm not an advocate of getting a college education for acting. So it was as if I was getting like a firsthand insane education from writers, actors, directors. The classes there were incredible that I took. I took from William Hickey. I mean, just incredible people. At HB, I had some incredible teachers at HB, but my family was here, and then my mom got sick, and after I finished One Life to Live, I got a call that they were recasting Baywatch. They had shot the pilot, and the girl that played Parker Stevenson's wife, they wanted someone funny. They wanted someone quirky and funny. It wasn't someone at the beach. She was a performance artist. And my agents were like, they want you to put yourself on tape. I was in New York, and I put myself on tape, and I got it. It was its first season when it was on NBC. So I was back in LA again. And then I stayed.
Wow.
So that's the nutshell version.
Wow, I love this, because it's like there's eras. We got
the craziest part about this is, by the time I came back to do Baywatch, I was only 30. That's how much life I had by the time I was 30 years old. I was only 30 at that point,
That's Eric, you got anything to chime in over there?
No, so you hadn't even started teaching yet at that point.
No.
Okay.
No, but what happened is I when I finished One Life to Live, and I hadn't gotten Baywatch yet, I had a friend who I thought was really good, and we would go up against each other for stuff. And I asked her about her training, because I'd done 6 years of daytime. That's a long time to be in that lane. Even though I was going to classes the whole time I was on daytime, I always continued to attend class. I wanted to completely revisit my technique, which I knew dancers did that all the time. Athletes do it all the time. Singers do it all the time. So to me, it was a no-brainer after 6 years of the same genre. And someone said, "You have to find Sanford Meisner." So I looked him up, and he had you had to take in Beckwith first, and then he chose from the students that were in Beckwith to be in his classes. And he had just started teaching in LA rather than the neighborhood playhouse. He had just come out here. So it was perfect, because I was doing Baywatch, and it was a huge ensemble cast. So I was able to literally study with Sandy and be working on a show. So it was incredible. The fun thing about that is I played Parker Stevenson's wife, and his picture was in my 9th grade locker. And I got to play his wife. And then 10 years after the show was over, we reconnected, and we were together for 7 years.
Talk about manifestation.
Right? crazy. But yeah, so then I found Sandy. I trained with Sandy the whole time I was doing the show. And then for ongoing, I knew of Playhouse West. So I started Playhouse, and Bob and Jeff were like, you have to teach here, you know? So I was in class and started teaching. So I've been teaching. This year is my 33rd year teaching at the school.
Wow. Congratulations.
I've been teaching there longer than most of the students' age, which is crazy to think. Because I still feel when I walk in, especially because Carnegie keeps it the same, the chairs, there have been so many people from the past that have come into town or come to see How to Fight Loneliness, actors that were in class with me who walk in and go, oh my God, half of me is sweating, half of me is exhilarated. Like, I don't know how to feel right now, but they're like, this is a time warp. The colors are the same, the chairs are the same, the rug is the same. So you feel like it's like you've gone home, like to your childhood home, I love that about it. I love paying it forward. I love that it's my home base. Mr. C, myself, and so many of my friends there and former students that I'm still friends with, we've been through so much. Like at this point, when you're still close, like you guys were in class together, like you're close. You've been through it. As you get older, life happens to you. There's marriages, divorces, deaths. We've all been through it. And that there's something to be said for that journey more so than the procuring work is the icing on the cake. The people that you're meeting and the creating of projects and stuff like this and plays and art, I mean, no matter what it is, it's that artistic journey that really is the payoff, far more than the work. And I wish I knew that more when I was younger, because I wouldn't get something and I'd be so upset. And I look back now and that wasn't even important. You know what I mean? My friends and life was so much bigger, so much bigger than that.
No, you're spot on about that. And the individual who, do you know Daryl Morris? No. He was my teacher in Las Vegas. He's the one that told me about Playhouse. He just kept telling me, Playhouse.
I've heard about him. Gar had
Playhouse. Yeah, Gar had him. Yeah, that's how Gar and I connected. We had the same teacher in Vegas, and he would just always talk about Playhouse West. I'm like, I have no idea what he's talking about. But he found out I was moving to LA. He just goes, you're going to Playhouse West, right? I go, well, I guess I am. And I went, and I just, the community, there's nothing. I don't know if I've seen anything, especially if you're an artist. Like you said, it goes so far beyond acting. And
people that don't get it are going to view it as culty. So I guess you'd call the group theater a cult then. You know what I mean? Like all those original dancers at the, the greatest schools in Russia. I guess they're a cult. If it's a cult, I'm happy to be a part of it. Because it is. I've seen people that are at all-time lows and have their classmates who become their friends say, move it, come stay on my couch if you need to, it's very much, Bob and Jeff wanted it to be kind of designed after the group theater with the same artistic sensibilities, same style of acting, the camaraderie, the creating of plays. And, I think to myself, God, Brando and certain actors getting directed by Kazan, they're all speaking the same language, how exciting, how fun. Nowadays, you very often get an editor who, part of their renewal of their contract was they get to direct an episode of a show, right? Or you get the first AD getting an episode of a show. They've never trained in acting. They don't know. They're not necessarily actors, directors, which is another reason why you really have to have a lot of training. But they're thinking about how they're piecing it together and how it's shot and how it looks. They're not necessarily, you know, really taking the actors through an experience. I just think, God, can you imagine being directed by Kazan?
Oh gosh.
Crazy.
Wow.
So that's for me, directing at the school. That's literally, it's like I'm a puppeteer and I can say, this is what I need you to do here. And they do it. I don't, there's no hemming, hawing. Oh, I can't do that. Everybody can do everything. And that's what's so fun. I mean, you say jump, they say how high. They're the best actors, I think, in the world coming out of that school. The proof is in the pudding. And not necessarily big stars, just working people who are consistently working, not just kind of flash in the pan.
Yeah, and that's why I was excited to have you on too, because I think because you're really connected to the business side.
Yeah.
You do coaching, you do, that whole world.
Yeah.
So you really get to see, I was definitely curious to your perspective. Everyone goes, I'm going to come to LA and be a star, It's like, no, this is work. It's a job. Like you have to constantly train at it.
I get, my coaching is to anyone. I don't just coach Playhouse West people. I get a lot of Playhouse people, but I have my actual career right now is coaching. Teaching at the school is really a vocation for me. And I love being around young people. It keeps me super young. But so I'm completely word of mouth, and I get sent people. I have huge clients. I have brand new clients. And there are times where people show up, and I think of students of mine who are just so good and who've worked so hard that just can't catch a break. And someone will show up. They haven't memorized it. There's a huge project right now. Huge. I got sent 6 guys last week on it. 5 of the 6 had never seen, nor did they watch the major motion picture this was based on. They knew nothing about it. And I'm thinking, well, that's your competition, They didn't even bother watching the movie. It's an old movie. And I get people that don't bother learning it, and I think, how did you get a rep? Like, how did this happen for you? Was it a family member or a relative? What I love about this is I had a manager reach out to me last week who I coach a lot of his people, pretty well-known people. And he's like, look, your tapes are head and shoulders over any other tapes I'm seeing. I want to meet you. So he took me to coffee, which is so rare. Often I'm out, like I was at a party and I met a manager and I'm like, oh, your agent, your assistant is so-and-so. I coach your client. So they don't even know because I'm dealing with the assistants. This guy sought me out, said, I want to have coffee. He said, he has really big people. He said, but I have 15 managers under me. Some are brand new. This is what we're looking for. This is what we want. You send me the people. And I'm thinking, this guy's so smart because he's going to the person that sees these people all day, every day, rather than hoping someone happens to see someone in a play or something and saying, send me, this is what we're looking for. And we might not take them, but send them. And I mean, that you can't procure work if you're not seen. You have to somehow be putting yourself out there, whether it's a class, a play, TikTok. I mean, TikTok and Instagram are huge. I have this guy I coach. He's brilliantly funny. He's got 3 million Instagram followers, all different characters. All these different, he's a comedian, tons of different characters that he does. He's brilliant. Well, agents are smart. Someone latched on to him, and now he comes to me for coaching because they saw him. If you're not going to a comedy club, how are you going to see this guy? So he has all sorts of content that he's creating. You have to be seen, you know? And all it takes is one person. It takes one person seeing you. But these people that come out here, I've had the reasons people have told me they're not in class is shocking to me. You know, oh, I already have my MFA. I already did this. I already did that. I don't think LeBron James stops going to practice because he's already on the Lakers. You know what I mean? Like, you have to train every day. You have to stay on top of your game, especially because you don't know when an opportunity is going to strike. You have to be ready. You can't think, oh, I'm on a break right now, and think that just energy-wise that work is going to come your way. It's not.
That's a phenomenal point because we've talked about that a lot, not just in acting, but other stuff like that. One-hit wonder syndrome, or whatever you call it. When you just say you do get that big break and you're not expecting it, well, what are you going to follow up with that? Especially in the world we live in now, it's like, oh, great for a day. All right, now.
Well, that's why you
got?
see so many actors who were like, they just were the role for the show, and they get a show, then you never see them again, right? But then you see other people who have such longevity, like a Mark Pellegrino, like people who just continue to procure work, and they're just working actors. They've got the privacy and the career, you know, and that's really what I loved about my career when I was acting, is I was able to work when I could, when I wanted to. I had my daughter, I stopped. When my mom got sick, I stopped. Like, that's what you want. You want to get to a point where you can kind of call the shots, you know, and just be working. But everyone has this idea of hitting it big. How about just be good? You know, you'll hit it big if you're good. You're going to work, you know? But look at some of the really, really big actors. Are some of them very good? You know what I mean? So what constitutes big? And it's an interesting, you know, at the end of the day, I have more people that are like, I'm really having doubts. I don't know if I can make a living at this. It's like, there's a lot of artists that never sold a painting whose paintings are now selling for millions and millions and millions of dollars. They died penniless. So what constitutes big or successful, or does it have a price or an income or a definition? You know, what's your definition of it? Because you haven't booked anything, you're not an actor? It doesn't make any sense. If I haven't sold a painting, I'm not an artist? That's so weird.
I think Mozart died broke too. He wasn't even big till decades and decades later.
Well, I think a lot of parents worry about their kid making a living. I will say this for anybody. Plan on having another job. Just plan on it. Even when you're a working actor, until you're working, you're going to have another job, because right now there's so much content that, and there's so many different, there's ultra low budget, and there's new media, and there's all this stuff. If you're living in LA, it's not enough to live on. It's just not. So have something you know how to do that you're good at, and that'll be your other gig. And, you know, whether it's you're a headshot photographer or a substitute teacher, dog walker, you know, there's tons of stuff. So you can pursue your career. But a lot of people are like, it's either or. Well, why? It doesn't have to be either or at all. By the way, you don't know who you might meet at your job. Like, that's the other really cool thing about it. Rather than, you need a paradigm shift and go, Ca del Sol right here used to be a restaurant called Maison Gerard. The owner hired all really attractive dancers, singers, and actresses. And when I was 16, all the girls in my ballet company, when we weren't performing, they'd work there at night to make extra income. So I went to him and I'm like, I'm only 16, but I can hostess. So he lied for me and I'm working there. And I was doing all those commercials at the time. And this guy came in and said, "You're a dancer, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You think you could play high school?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I didn't want to say I'm in high school because she had to be 18. And he goes, "So we're casting this episode of Quincy." That's how I got the Quincy episode. He said, the girls have to be gymnasts and you're dancer, gymnasts, you all look the same. Come to Universal on Monday, wrote it down. Here's where you're going. You'll get the material when you get there. And I got it. And there were like 6 of us on this gymnastics team. And that was when the commercial lady said, "Well, now you're going to have to get an agent." But it was from working at a restaurant on a Saturday night at 16 as a hostess. And he was in there. So the meeting the guy and getting the sundae at whatever the famous diner was that whoever was discovered at, you don't know who you might meet somewhere. I had a student who was a server at some restaurant. Literally, what's the steakhouse one? The famous steakhouse, Outback. So he was a server at Outback. An agent comes in, and at this point, he's in advanced. If you've had me as a teacher, you know that I am constantly badgering you about having headshots, having your stuff together, because So he comes to me. "I met this agent, and he wants my picture and my resume and a demo reel." I'm like, "Great. Did you send it to him?" "Should have all just been on his phone for him to send." "Oh no, I don't have any of it." And I'm like. So he spends a week taping and editing a scene, taking headshots, making a resume. He calls the guy's office and the assistant was like, "Who? Like, your opportunity was right there. It's crazy. You got to be prepared. It doesn't happen on the day. You don't train on the day. Oh my God, I made it to the Dodgers. I better start learning how to bat. I mean, by the time that opportunity comes up, everything's in alignment. So there went that. I have millions of those stories.
I was going to say, I was having flashbacks to when I've had you in class before, you telling some of those.
I had a guy, he was the whole package, had it all. Charming, handsome, just the classic young leading man. And I had a manager who I coached a ton of their people. And I said, "Look, I've got this guy for you. He's a fantastic guy." Great. They set up a meeting. The guy calls me from his car crying. I said, "What's the matter?" He says, I went and I was 5 minutes late and the assistant came out and told me to go home. I'm like, "Shit, yeah." And I think it was like 2 years later, he was waiting on me somewhere. And I thought to myself, can you imagine if you had just been early to that appointment? It's like The Alchemist, what road would you have been on had you not made that stupid decision to be late? It makes me sad because I can't bang it into people, Listen, I had Sandy. If you were late, you were kicked out.
I wanted to get back to him. So, because you have studied with the man
with
himself.
The man.
Could you
the scariest 2 years of my whole life.
Can you share with us that experience?
I wish. It's so funny as you get older, you're like, "Oh, I wish I could do that again with the perspective I have now." But he was so brilliant that you wanted to be good. And it's the worst thing you could do in class is want to be good. But you wanted to get, that was quite okay. You wanted to be told, hey, that you're onto something. He was very, he didn't give out compliments freely unless you really were good. So you knew when you were told something was quite okay. You never got a good. I never heard him say very good ever. But then you knew it was, right? So this is my favorite Sandy story because he just made you want to work hard. I can't explain it because he was terrifying as fuck. It's like the Wizard of Oz when you would go up to do your scene and they're walking down that hallway and he's in the green, behind the green curtain, and there's that big face, who goes, and the lion jumps off. That's how I would feel. So I walked by him one day. This was in advanced. I walked by him one day and I must have sighed. I was like, and he grabbed my arm. Holly, what's wrong with you? And I was like, it's a really hard scene. He goes, you want to be good? I said, yes, I want it to be good. I'll admit it. And he got really emotional because he got very attached to us by the end of the 2 years, especially the people that lasted. And he said, don't you know that I know you're a baby? And I was like, huh? He says, if you saw a mother in a store beating a baby up, you would be very upset, probably call the police. And I was like, yeah. He said, then why do you do that to yourself? And I was like, mind blown. And that was a real paradigm shift for me where I felt like I'm just going to come in. I never did that in ballet. Class was to improve and level up. Like, why was I viewing this as and I think there was a little part of me because I was revisiting my technique. I felt like I was in a hurry. Like, I have to get this because I'm changing everything. But I learned from him that this is an artistic process. It's not a math equation. There is no answer. There's no right way. At the end of the day, there's truth or not. And however you get there is correct, if we believe it, and we're taking on that journey. And that your job is to just bring whatever the truth is to the moment. That's it. And I was making such a big deal out of it because he was so big, when actually, if you were to take the Meisner work and put it in a nutshell, it's to pare it down to the most simple human truth. That's why it looks so raw, so real, almost looks improvised. People that have had him or trained with Meisner work, there's nothing fancy about it. I remember when I was in method, I'd be doing a scene and I'd have to get emotional and I could feel myself checking out, going to where I needed to go and not even being connected to my partner anymore. And I've since worked with other method people now, and it's like, hello, come back. It's interesting to watch, but if you remember in school when you had fractions and they would make you bring it down to the lowest common denominator, that's what you do with any material. What is the human element of this? What is this scene really about? So here's a perfect example. There was a period in there where there was some show where it was about suicide, and all these people were getting suicide auditions, children, parents calling me, my child has to cry. They have to be suicidal. Well, they don't have to be suicidal. They need to understand what that's about. What's the human element of suicide? You're quitting. You're giving up. That's the lowest common denominator there. That's the human element of what that's about. Period. Well, we've all had to quit something. a relationship, living somewhere, a job, give up a pet we were allergic to. It doesn't matter what it is. If it resonates with you, then now you understand what it's about. Oh, I'm quitting. I'm completely giving up. Well, that's easy to act. It's making things into these big, obviously, once it comes time to do research on a role, and I'm talking about having to make instant, when you're auditioning, you have to make instant, you have to work efficiently, very few auditions do you have a lot of time with. So, and then once you book stuff, then you know how you're going to research it, what kind of work you're going to do on it. But so much of it is just life experience and your humanity. You can't have humanity if you're not walking around being a human being, you know? I've got a couple clients, they're holed up all day watching movies, studying movies. I'm like, you're not interacting. Marlon Brando used to hide in phone booths so that he could, once he was Marlon Brando, so that he could study people, right? Like, you got to be living the life of a human being if you're going to be portraying a human being, in all of their glory, good, bad, and ugly, And I think that's what's missing. And that was the crux of Sandy's teaching. It's human and believable, or it's not. And he accepted nothing less. He didn't care if you were getting it. He cared that you were working hard. We had to dress for class. You didn't go to class looking, in shorts and sweats and flip-flops. You had to dress and be put together and you had to be on time. I sometimes was coming from work. I made sure, back then there were no cell phones. Had to call someone and say, make sure he knows I'm coming from work. I became so obsessed with it, though, that I would go to the ADs if I saw I was on the day out of days for a day that class was, and go, hey, can I, because class was at 3:30. Can I be up early? And they're like, great, because the other actors wanted to sleep in. I'd work and then I'd make it to class. So it was fantastic. But he was, I had the nuns, as I said earlier, and he was scarier than the nuns in an entirely different way. If you can explain being so scared because you wanted to do well, that makes sense. You just wanted to do well for him, It's like when you see those skating coaches off to the side at the Olympics and they're with their little skater, and the skater's like, that they want, it's as much for their coach as it is for themselves, because he put everything into it. So he made you want to do well. Boy, I wish I could have conversations with him now that I've taught for so long, which is another 20 years in and of itself as well, I think. I'm nothing like the teacher I was in the beginning. I've contacted old students and gone, I was kind of hard on you. I'm sorry. And they're like, it was the greatest thing ever. But that's how I was taught. And then I had to realize, okay, wait a minute. Everyone's at a different place.
So if you were late, you were kicked out of class?
Usually.
You're done.
He'd go, where's her partner? Partner's not feeling well. He'd look at the person, call your partner and tell them not to come back. He did not care how many people were left in the class. He did not care. He was not doing it for the money. I had a partner who was kind of a flake. He'd be there, he wouldn't be there. So I had this other scene ready to do a first reading, the scene Homefront.
Oh, yeah.
So I had Homefront. And I thought, the day's going to come where my partner's not here. And there was this other kid in class who was really good. And I said, look, because you had the same partner for the whole 2 years. So yeah, you had the same partner the whole time. Same thing in Beckwith, you had the same partner the whole time. So I was like, oh my God, please, please don't show up today. And I had already, that guy already had the script. And I was like, Sandy, I have a partner ready to go. You're now partners. Tell the other fella not to bother. And we'd be like, not to bother, as in don't come back, not to bother. Like you're almost afraid if you said not to bother and he
You
didn't,
too,
you're out too. So it was like, not to bother, not to come back. Like, okay. And he had these really thick glasses, so his eyes were like Mr. Magoo bug, I look back now, it was hilarious. But boy, I had classmates in there who were really extraordinary actors, extraordinary. And ironically, a girl who was in my class with Sandy, I coach her teenage son now. He has a manager and he's an actor, and I coach her son.
Wow.
Right? There are people that come into Playhouse West that, like, I remember one day, Christian Madsen walked in many years ago. When I started Playhouse West, his mom, Janine Madsen, was out to hear pregnant. And Bob finally one day said, look, Janine, you can come to class. He was so terrified she was going to go into labor in class or her water was going to break. So he was like, look, please, you could come to class, but you got to stop now. So this guy walks in and I'm putting his name in the book. I'm like, what's your name? And he goes, Christian Madsen. And I'm looking at his age and his face. And I'm like, your mom can't be Janine. And he's like, yeah. I was like, she was pregnant with you in my class. Like, and there's a ton of people like that. E.G. Daly was in my class. Her daughter Hunter goes to the school now. I mean, the Spawn are showing up now, which is crazy to think, It's crazy, but it shows that they all had great experience, that they're sending their own kid there.
Right.
You're willing to send your own child somewhere. You had to have learned something.
And just to be clear, you were with Sandy at Playhouse West, right?
Yes,
When he was
his
there.
first year in LA. It was his first year in LA teaching in LA. He and Jimmy moved here. So we studied, and Neighborhood Playhouse was being run by whoever it was being run by. I think I have to ask Bob about this, but I think it was about the weather, that Sandy came out here. He had a cane, he was getting older. So, but yeah, I was, like I said, we were in Bequia. Bequia was insane because you had class in the morning, and then after class there was lunch and time where we would rehearse and relax, and then any time between, I think it was 2 and 5, you could go up to Sandy's house and visit with him, sit outside and chat. I think I've recently posted a picture on the anniversary of his death of me sitting there with a paper plate, I think with some carrots or something, just talking with him. He was a very, very phenomenal pianist. He was a classically trained pianist. So he loved the fact that I was a classically trained ballet dancer. He had a real understanding for what that took. So we talked about that a lot, and the parallels, and auditioning. Oh, I remember having so many conversations with him about auditioning, and him saying, at the end of the day, people think that working off means that person has to literally be in front of them. You have to work out of the truth. You're working off the truth. You might not be even working off another actor. It might be something that's going to be put in, CGI. I mean, back then we didn't have CGI, but he'd say, I've done so many shows where the actor needed to make their turnaround and they shot him out and I'm acting opposite a piece of tape. And you don't go, well, there's nothing to work off of. Well, there is. It's called your imagination. And you're going to have to pretend that you are in that environment with that person in that world. That's what working off is. I've had more people go, oh, it was a flirting scene and I'm a dude and the casting director was a dude and I couldn't do it. It's like, well, no, you're completely misinterpreting what working off means and what utilizing the other person moment to moment means. The other person doesn't even need to be there. Casting doesn't have to be an incredible actor or a very good reader. You have to take what they're saying as truth, filter it as truth, utilize it and experience it as the truth. Where you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it. Regardless of, what, if I'm doing a frosted mini wheat commercial, I need to have a real mini wheat flying around on the table that's jumping on the spoon, greeting me. Guys, where's the mini wheat? I mean, you gotta, especially nowadays. I mean, look at Game of Thrones, and I'm really into The Boys. Look at all the effects on those shows. Do people think that's happening on the set? A head is, exploding right in front of you. Sometimes, often not. They're just taking some splatter and splattering your face, and you're like, ah. So it's your job Sandy said this all the time. To be an incredible actor, you have to have an incredible imagination. Not, you need to be able to do this, that, and the other. You need to have an incredible imagination. That's it. And by the way, the majority of us, actors or not, had that as little children. When you ran around the house with a towel around your neck and were pretending you're Batman and now you're an insurance salesman, you had that. Someone somewhere along the way told you to stop. Someone told you that painting was gay, or suck it up, be a big boy, don't get upset. People shut you down, especially the men. You were shut down as little boys,
And that's why I thought it was about interesting coming to Playhouse, because I struggled with this part at first, because you said you shut certain parts of yourself down, but then you get into these exercises where you're trying to find those emotions again. It's like you're pretty much trying to get that little kidness back in a way, like throw a tantrum, get mad at that, take it personally.
I saw a kid in Target. He fell and he hit his head. He was hurt. And the mom's going, you're okay. You're okay. And I'm like, I had to stop because I'm me. I said, he's not okay. He's hurt. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to get this kid in 15 years when he wants to be an actor, and he's going to be all shut down and all fucked up because he wasn't allowed to even cry when he was genuinely hurt. It's terrible. So that's what's interesting about this training. I remember when I first started acting, I was plunked into a class and handed a scene. And I equate this to basketball. If you have a kid and they want to learn basketball, you're not going to put him in on a team that's already been playing, plunk him on the team and say, run up and down. You'll figure out the game. He will. It will take forever. Then had someone first taken them through the process of passing, shooting, and dribbling. Pass, dribble, shoot, until you can do it in your sleep. That's what all those early exercises are. It's just learning the machinations so you don't have to think about listening. You don't have to think about the reality. You don't have to think about allowing yourself to be pinched and experience the other actor. You're conditioned. Then, once you've got those skills, the coach says, okay, now we're going to play some practice games. No refs, no 3-second clock, no rules. We're just going to take what you've learned and see how you function. That's exactly what the intermediate work is. We give you text. We give you a little emotional preparation to go with it. And it's practice. We just see how you handle the skills you've learned so far, merged with the text. Then you're ready for the NBA or college or high school or whatever you're going to play, and you have a playbook. And that's where you've got mad skills. You don't have to think about your skills. LeBron isn't thinking about dribbling, handball. He's busy playing the game. That's the advanced work. It's author's intention, it's interpretation, it's characterizations, it's all the icing. The technique is done. We don't need to think about that anymore. You've got your mad skills. So it's so clear and simple that I wonder, if I had found this not when I was 30, but when I was 18, when taking all over the place. But we didn't have anybody like that in LA at the time. Nobody. So we were just plunked into scenes.
And what was that like to have all that? Because you had a ton of experience going into that, but
When
then
I
to
met
totally
with him,
relearn everything.
Oh my God, that's a great question. When I met with Sandy, I sat down and I told him my background and that I'd just come off a show and 6 years of a particular kind of show. And he said, wow. And I told him about my dad, basically everything I just told you. He said, this is as if you have a PhD and you're going back to kindergarten. He said, why would you want to do it? And I don't know if you can do it. I said, oh no, you don't know me. I can do it. I can 100% do it. How it turns out, who knows? But he thought that I was going to get frustrated with how now you can go on YouTube and look at videos of people doing repetition and whatnot, watch his documentary. There wasn't anything like that to watch back then. So you're going in blind. And so I said, I can. And I actually loved the fact that you start at ground zero. Put your attention on the other person. And what's happening? You're wearing a burgundy turtleneck. I felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders because I knew from ballet, you start at the bar. You start as a child. They just have you skip. You're not even doing any positions or plies or anything. They have you skip. They have you hop, pretend you're a bunny. They have you do all these little things to get your skills set. Then they teach you the positions and a few little things at the bar. It's a progression. If you look at any sport, any instrument, any form of dance, a progression has to take place, except for acting. Let's just plunk you and you'll figure it out. It'll be a long time. And it'll take you 4 times as long than if you just took 2 years and got your basics down pat. Then figure out where you want to go from there. It was the greatest. And what I love about teaching is I didn't get it easily at first. I had to stop thinking. From being on daytime, there's so much dialogue. You're like, well, you're thinking of your next line. You're not even zoned in on the other person except on a lucky day. So to just relinquish all of that at first was really hard. And I had to literally relearn how I acted, which is why I know I'm a good teacher, because I had to learn it. A lot of people just instinctively get something, never had any other training. That doesn't mean they can teach. Which brings me to my biggest bone of contention at all. People who claim to be teachers. There's, boy, I got to word this carefully. There are a lot of people who are involved in the industry who choose to teach. I equate them to a baseball scout. They know the talent when they see it. They know what they want to see. They know what they need to see, and they know it when they see it. They weren't the person that taught that person how to play baseball. It's an actual acting teacher. It's a whole different skill set. And not everyone that is good at something, it doesn't mean they can teach it. And not everyone that is really astounding at finding talent doesn't mean they can teach it. I'm trying to be careful with my words because I don't want to bash anybody, but it'd be like me turning around and saying, well, my dad was a DP. I'm going to teach camera and cinematography and lenses. Of course, I'm familiar with it. Of course, I know shots and what they are. I would never dream of thinking I'm going to go into USC Film School and teach it. That's a joke. You're going to learn from the people that are completely versed backward and forward in that, you know? There's a lot of people that claim to be teachers, no different than life coaches. A lot of people are coaches.
Well, and I'll throw this question in the mix. This is the first time this concept's come up, and I'm just using acting as an example, but you have so many people that want to become actors. And by the way, and we can talk a little more about the business, acting is expensive. It's not, you got to put money into it to really pursue it. And I think
it's an investment, just like anything.
Yeah. And I think there is a lot of people that know that, okay, these kids are coming out here, or whoever want to be actors, and take advantage of that.
That's
perhaps.
Absolutely correct.
So is that,
you said it, not me. Sam said that.
Well, and again, I don't think it's malicious.
No.
I just think people are just trying to make their way, and there's nothing wrong there. But I do think you bring up a good point to think about, like critically think about, okay, what is actual teaching? And
well,
what are you?
P.S. I think teaching acting in college should be against the law. I don't think it should even be offered in colleges. There are acting, that's like saying we're teaching ice skating in college. We're going to teach you how to get to the Olympics. And maybe there are teachers that can, but why would you do it in college? Go take skate. I get, Sam, if you knew the amount of people I get that say, my kid's choosing between Miami and some other musical theater school. I don't know what. And I'm like thinking, how much are these schools? And for them to end up being a light bulb in the Disneyland electrical parade. I'm like, listen, and I know that's harsh, but look, if your kid has a desire and a feel for musical theater, get them an apartment in New York. Have them take, with the best acting classes, the best dance classes, and the best singing classes. They're in the hub of musical theater. They can be auditioning. They could be doing chorus and shows. They're not taking 4 years away with spending a fortune on it just to be pounding the pavement against people that have been doing it for the last 4 years. By the way, they're getting taught by some people that have never performed a day in their lives. They got their teaching degree, but they've never been on a stage. They've never acted on a sound stage. They've never been in front of a camera. There's so many teachers that are teachers. Well, then teach math and engineering, and you go to college to learn a skill to fund your content that you're going to fund your movies you're going to make, You don't need to go to college for acting. There's a million incredible teachers in schools. Why would anyone spend that kind of money? It's crazy to me. A school like Playhouse West, for instance, is so cheap. Do your acting classes on the side and still have the college experience. But, I have so many students now who are like, dang, I have all this student debt. I've learned more at this school in 1 year than I did at 4 years at wherever. I just don't think it's necessary. I have a real issue with it, and people are spending all this money, and a lot of the teachers aren't teachers. They've got a teaching degree. They don't know how to get someone from point A to point B. They don't know how to pull emotion out of someone and teach them how to pull emotion out of themselves. That's a skill set that has to be learned, It's frustrating for me to watch. I had a manager send me someone, and I coach a ton of their people. And they said, look, this person just, they've got a lot of student loans. Would you mind? And I'm like, absolutely. I coach a ton of your people. I'll coach them for free. I don't care. I do that anyway if somebody is broke. So get the job and then you'll pay me. It'll happen. So this person had a 2-page scene. It was nothing. it was a nothing scene. Any one of my beginners at the school right now could do it. And they just couldn't have conversational reality. And they're like, I just got it. I said, everybody just got it. That's the nature of auditioning. So I said, so when you were signed out of college, how long did you folks work on those scenes? And she said, oh, well, 6 months. So you're working 6 months on a scene. So agents and managers sign you. And it's, well, if I had 6 months with an actor, I could go across the street to BMW and make him look like he's Marlon Brando. That's not necessarily learning how to act. That's 6 months working on a scene, making it as truthful as you can. That's not actually learning how to act, as you and I both know. It's and I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, and they just graduated and have all this debt. What did they were projecting. She was projecting and sounding so theatrical. And it's like, and I'll tell you what's funny. When I was really young and I was in New York, and Marcia Cross was my roommate at One Life to Live. We're good friends. And she had just graduated Juilliard, and there were people coming out of Carnegie Mellon and all these places coming and auditioning. And I was just like the LA girl that came to New York and got lucky being on the show. And I felt so, because I hadn't gone to Yale School of Drama, which the woman that played my mother on the show did. I was like, oh my God, I don't live up to all these people. And then at the end of the day, I was like, wait a minute. There are lots of ways to go about this. If you've had good teachers, there are lots of ways to go about this. But you don't have to go broke. You don't need to go broke. I find it sad, people coming out of college, $200,000 in debt, and they're actors. Why get a teaching degree so that you can go be a substitute teacher and act all day long?
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah. I think it also makes you more relaxed that, I used to be of the mentality, because I didn't have a plan B. So I didn't have a plan B. I had to get work. But I do think there's something to be said for coming out here. You don't know anyone. My really good friend, Mark Teschner, whenever he's spoken at Playhouse West, he has said, look, the hard part is done. You made the decision to come here. Like that's the scariest, hardest thing you'll have ever done in your career. This now should be fun for you and interesting and exciting and exhilarating. So, it doesn't have to be doom and gloom, and I think that a lot of people come here thinking it's going to happen fast because everything's fast. Ask me a question. Oh, well, let me look. Let me ask Siri. There's an answer for everything. There's just, everything is so fast. Well, art doesn't, creatives and art don't work that way. That's not, it's not the way it works.
I love that. I think that's a great point. I have another thing. Eric, do you have anything while you're over there?
I was thinking about that as well. As far as film school is kind of the same thing. It's like, especially how much you're paying for that. You work like 9 months on one like 15-minute film, and that's it. And that's $100,000, but you could have made like 10.
You could have gone to the public library and gone on, what's it called, Laura? What's that app at the public library that has lighting, cameras, everything you could possibly need to know? Yeah, it's all in the library. I think it's called Laura. I could be wrong. You're going to have to check it.
Yeah, we'll look that up.
Where it's even YouTube.
Right. And you're still, no matter, I think what you learn though is no matter what you learn, like from books and education, you still got to get the reps in and learn it for yourself in real time, in real life.
I work with a lot of lawyers on their closing arguments. And because at the end of the day, they have to be convincing. Who does the jury believe? really. And they say the same thing. They're like, law school doesn't have us do this. We're learning all the laws, all the facts. We take the bar, but there's no, like, there's nothing that prepares you for getting up in a court in front of a jury, and other than just doing your hours.
Mm-hmm.
You got to just put in the hours, you know? So I'm always very surprised how many people think that by coming out of some program, they're going to just all of a sudden get a bunch of work. It's not a meritocracy, sadly. You know, there's no rhyme or reason to it. But at the end of the day, I think if you're really, really, really good, someone somewhere is going to take notice. And that's all it takes, is one person to take notice.
I remember you, I think you said this, you would always say everything's one audition away. You're one audition away. And I think that applies to anything, whether you're an actor, no matter what it is you do, you're one thing away from someone saying, yeah, we want them.
Well, that's what have you ever seen that movie, The Mist?
I haven't.
I don't want to give the ending away, but I got to kind of give the ending away. It is such a metaphor for actors. There's monsters and this mist, and these people are in this store, and they're trying to get out. And it's, I just see it as actors. And the kid is terrified of the monsters, and the dad is, trying to get out of this place and away from the monsters. And then the ending is like, they were this close.
Oh, Stephen King, right? Yes, I have seen it. Yeah.
They're like the fog parts, and there's the help. And at this point, the guy's killed his kid and everybody. And he was right there. Well, if you knew the day you were going to get work, would you quit?
Absolutely not.
Right? But everybody, like, you have no idea. Like, you could be right there. Gene Hackman auditioned for the dad on the Brady Bunch, and he didn't get it. He tested for it, and he didn't get it. He went home. He said to his wife, "That's it. I quit. I'm done. I'm quitting acting." And she's like, "You're not." And then within months, he got the French Connection. He was going to be the dad on the Brady Bunch.
I've never heard that.
Crying a river over it. Yes.
Wow.
It's a great story.
So it's always been like that. It was like that back then, because what I wanted to see, I wanted to talk the future and present, where we're at with acting and everything. Where do you see it all going? Like Hollywood in particular, the business.
I see no SAG in 10 years. I see no union. A lot of people don't want to hear that, but if you look at the amount of content that is non-union, that people are just creating their own projects and selling them, and there's so many HR laws in different states and countries and cities that you don't need the union fighting for you anymore. I'm not saying I'm anti-union, but I think if anyone has a phone, they can go make a movie. And that opens massive doors for creatives of all sorts. And so I look at what I'm coaching on, and it's so many different kinds of things and genres and styles and what it's being made for, and video games and just all this stuff. I just think with technology and talent and AI, I don't really think that, I think the sky's the limit, but I also think that the only time you're ever going to see a for real experience for real is in the theater. All you theater people that have been working on plays and stuff, you're ahead of the game, because where are we going to see something 100% real? Look how much is fake already. It's crazy. Like 100% real, visceral experience where you and I are having an exchange. It's only going to be in the theater. So I just I don't know how much union stuff there's going to be. The kind of content with threads and TikTok. Like, remember way back it was Vine. Vine was the thing, and you know, there's all these I have a ton of clients and students doing all these vertical things. I don't even know what they are.
Vertical soap operas, I think they're called. Yeah.
I think they're based on, I think they're kind of ads for books. It's like the book, it's almost like trailers for books, like 5-minute stories to promote certain books on tape. I think that's what a lot of them are. I mean, I have a friend that's a casting director. He's like, I can't keep up. I have students that are doing 5 a week. They're doing non-stop verticals, and they're getting paid well because they're good actors and they're reliable. They see that they show up and they're really, they're ready and they can do it. I have a ton of students doing them. And I just think there's going to be, it's not to bash union at all. I just think there's so much different stuff now. The stuff that I'm seeing and coaching on, it's crazy. It's a little sad because it's like, are movies, like old school movies, done? Is it? But even TV shows, look at all the different kinds of shows there are. You've got your classic procedurals like Succession, one of my favorite shows, Ozark, phenomenal. Just, brilliant. But then you've got shows like The Boys and Game of Thrones and, Squid Game and all this crazy stuff. It is what it is. And, during the strike, I had so many friends complaining about the amount of pages sides were and having to tape at home. And, you've got to change with the times. You have to, or you're going to be left behind in the dust. The acting styles have changed from way back. Everybody used to speak like this when they were acting in all those 1940s movies. It's not like that. Unless you're in that kind of movie. But they were like self-taped. Yes, it's exhilarating to be in the room, but gosh, you can do a self-tape and do it until it's spot on and send in your absolute best work and not walk back to your car going, oh my God, I peaked in the car. I was so good driving there. And then I sucked in the producer session, or saying, all those pages are what separate the men from the boys. Someone that can pick up 16 pages of sides and nail it and turn it in a day later knows their shit. So, but and then I have to edit it and I have to send it in. Well, yes, because that's the technology now. So what are you going to do? Are you going to stay behind and hope things are going to go back? Nothing is ever going back. AI, the genie is out of the bottle. It's been out of the bottle for many years. All the non-union and ultra low budget has been out of the bottle for many, many years. All these verticals and all these new media out of the bottle for many years. So you've got to educate yourself and you have to stay up on it. But the coolest thing is anyone can make their own content. When I was younger, my dad would save his short ends for me, short ends of film. And he'd say, this is how much is on this. And it'd be, you have a minute, you have 30 seconds. And so we'd come up with like a minute thing and like try. And then you'd have to go to an editor who was $500 an hour to edit your film. It was film. I mean, now anyone, I remember my daughter in elementary school making, if she had a babysitter, her and the babysitter making a horror movie with music and her walking through the house with the lights out, and anybody can do it now, which is incredible. It opens to the world to anyone with a dream. Anyone with a dream can create something now. It's not limited to the lucky that get the opportunity to come here or go to film school. It's anyone. If you have equipment, you could be living in the bush and make content, which is what's so cool, I think. It's global. It's global creativity. There's no monopoly anymore. And God, I think that's phenomenal. Phenomenal. It's only going to get bigger. There's too much technology. People can make whatever they want. And even like the effects you can do now, right? You can pretty much do anything. So it's scary, but it's pretty cool. If I were just starting out now and I was speaking to my younger self, I would be only making my own content, creating my own content. I'd have my agent, I'd be auditioning, but I would be daily working toward creating my own stuff.
So that'd be one of your best advice for someone now.
Yep. You don't have to be a great writer. Every single person on this planet who's a creative has a story. Everyone has a story. Some people it's a funny story. Some people it's a sad story. Some people it's a triumphant story. Look at the Olympics right now, right? What's your journey and your story? That's your starting point. That's your baseline. And then you just take it from there, you know? But that's my advice. I tell my students daily now. You should be making your own content. Look at all the people, the girl Abbott Elementary, and these are all people that created their own stuff. Why would you not? What are you waiting for? Someone else? If you're not necessarily a great writer, but you're great techie, you're a really good actor, then you bring on your friends that, you've got to have. That's the cool thing about Playhouse West is the community. You bring on, you each have your job. That's what's so cool about it. Anybody can do anything. It's pretty neat, And I think super exciting because you're not waiting. Someone else doesn't have your fate in their hands. Oh my God. When I started acting, this is going to sound so lame, but when I started acting, there was a phone service that you had to call in called Teddy's. And you called to see if you had any messages, if your agents, and it was for anyone, whether they were like, when you call in a doctor's office, the service picks up after hours and says, what's your number? And they beep the doctor. That's what it was, only it was for all the crew. So the crew guys called, you called for your call times. There were no answering machines. You called Teddy's, and that's where a lot of the actors worked. They were answerers around the clock at Teddy's. And if you had a message from your agent, it was huge because they were kind of few and far between. There were 3 TV stations back then, 2, 4, and 7. There wasn't a lot of content. And clearly I didn't look blonde and blue-eyed, which was the majority of TV back then, let alone people of color, but no one looked like me. And, as times have changed, like anybody could be acting. You had to wait back then, and you had to hope that you got on some episode of TJ Hooker, which I did. But holy crap, you are not at the mercy of anyone now. I can't fathom what that would have been like when I was starting out, because you were at the mercy of everyone. How you looked, your nose, your mouth, your teeth, your body, your voice, your weight, your height, your color. There was, you were to this, to that, to everything for everyone. And now, who gives a fuck? Who cares? You get to do whatever you want. Doesn't it really even cost much? That's the other cool thing. You have your phone, you have your cameras. I mean, wow. I think it's such a super exciting time. A lot of people are like, oh, it's so hard. It's like, are you kidding? You guys, there was no fax machine. So if you had an audition, you had to drive. I remember I lived in West LA and I'd get an audition at Universal and my agents would call, you have an audition tomorrow morning at 10. So I'd have to drive at 5:00 to Universal to pick up the sides. That's hours of then driving home. That's hours I could have been studying. You had to drive. There was no Waze. You had a Thomas guide. It was this big, thick map that you had to figure out. Like they'd say the location is on page 36 AJ. So you go to page 36 AJ, and then you have to go backwards on each page to track your way back to your house. I'm from here, thank God. I can't imagine being someone that had just moved here back then. I can't fathom navigating the streets of LA, getting from Culver City to Warner Brothers in rush hour traffic. So you had that. You had to get to a payphone if you were at Warner Brothers, but you had to then be at Culver, which is now Sony. You'd have to call your reps and go, I'm supposed to be there in an hour, but I haven't gone in on this yet. They'd go, okay, go to the other one, and then you can come back to this. So you're driving. And then in that one, you're super sexy girl. So you got to put on all your makeup and you're super sexy girl. Then you got to go back to your girl next door girl, and you're in the car and you're changing. And there's no, you're getting to a payphone and I look back now and your headshots, you had to get your headshots, and there was a loop that your reps looked through, and they hoped they picked the one they liked, and then you go and you get it made. That was $20 to make one. Now bear in mind you have like 5 looks, so it's $20 to make one, and then you have to get it retouched. There were no computers. The retouchers were people that drew on your headshot. They drew on it to retouch everything. That was $30 to $50 per picture. Then you went back to the photo place, at the time ISGO, and they would make the negative of it. And then you would get the good paper. If your reps, I was with Paradigm, they wanted the good paper. Everybody else was going to Prince Charming. But, you had to make 100 of each picture. By the time you took the pictures, printed them out, had them retouched, you were in minimum $7,000. Minimum.
Jeez.
Minimum. And then that's how they submitted was your picture. So they'd run out of your pictures and you had to go print more because they were submitting you. By the way, you had to do that for your theatrical and your commercial. Now you click, oh, you know what? I don't have a hard copy of that, but this is the one where I look like the maniac. This will be a perfect picture to submit on that role. I look insane. You can have all the pictures you want up on your Actors Access. It was nothing like that. Reps sent a packet to casting of your picture and your resume. And then when you had your audition, you had to bring another one with you. You were spending a fortune. It's crazy. It was, I'll never forget when I got a fax machine. I was like, holy fuck. They can send me the script. I don't have to drive for 2 hours to pick up my sides. They can send me the script. Can you imagine? Now they just email it to you. And you know how many people come to me to coach and they don't even bother reading the script? It's crazy. It's crazy.
So I guess we don't have too much to complain about.
No.
when you paint it like that.
That's the other thing. Look, it was not for the faint of heart, and the competition was not, it was stiff, but it was all really good people who were dead serious about it because it cost a fortune. There weren't any I call them hobby lobbies. There were no hobby lobbies back then. None.
Right. So there may have been less people, but the people that you're going against are all cutthroat.
And there were also way fewer jobs.
Yeah.
Way fewer jobs. So, there were the 3 stations. There were the movies of the week that would be on ABC, right? And then there were films, and a lot of the films were in New York. And it was just way, way, way less opportunity. So yeah, there's way more people now, but anybody can do anything. And it can get seen. Like, my daughter was telling me that Anne Hathaway movie about the kid, the rock kid, like the One Direction type kid. It's a movie out right now and she's in love. My daughter was like, that's from fan fiction. There's a site where um, these people write fan fiction. In this case, it was One Direction, and the girl writes a story, and it was bought from that. They bought that girl's script and story, and it was made into this current Anne Hathaway movie. So the idea of you, it's very Hallmark. But at the end of the day, this is some young girl who wrote something on fan fiction and it gets bought. And that's not an isolated story. There's tons of these stories right now. Tons. So I think there's way more opportunity. If y'all never saw me again, if I was hit by a bus on the way home, I would say, do your thing. Start with your story. Wait for no one. Be beholden to no one. Be waiting for no one. The only person you're waiting for is yourself. There's no excuses now. None. It doesn't cost you anything. You can even take a headshot with your phone if you wanted to, So if you have a dream, go for it. You don't want to be looking back. I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, what a crazy ass journey. Just crazy. But I have zero regrets. I worked my ass off. I had fun. I made incredible friends and incredible relationships and did it on my time slot. And I just, you don't want to look back going, I wonder what would have happened if, there doesn't have to be, I wonder what would have happened if, because you can do your own thing. You can make your own TV series, your own web series, you can do anything. All it takes is one person to see it.
Now that was a clip. Holly, I think thank you so much for this.
This was a pleasure. It was so fun.
Yeah. And before we round out, Eric, do you have any?
I just want to piggyback off that. I think part of the reason some people might be afraid to take the risk of making their own thing is because they're thinking they got to do it by themselves. But again, don't do it by yourself because it's so much harder. But if you bring in other people, then you're held accountable.
And don't think it has to be good.
And don't think it has to be good, because it probably won't be starting out. Yeah. But just do it. But bringing on other people, that's been a huge thing for me. Without that, I'd still be like, oh, this isn't perfect enough, blah, blah, blah. But if you have other people involved, they're like, no, there's a deadline here because I'm waiting too. So we're both going to be doing this. And then like, hey, so-and-so he's only available this week. So like it forces shit to get done just by bringing in other people.
And it's fun.
Usually it's better when you bring in more people too.
Yes. It becomes almost like a creative party.
Yeah.
I've done more shorts for more people. And I have to tell you, those were some of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. More so than TV shows, more so than movies. Those are a whole different ballgame because you're collaborating. There's no money, it's so fun. It's just a collaboration. It's a blast. And once you start having fun, you will start, it will become other. It'll roll into other things. It will turn into more work for you, You have to do it. Don't look back. You're not going that way.
I got one final question for you before we close out here. And I've asked this before in here, but I'm very curious, this has been such a treat to hear your story, like long form, especially because, you can't fill this in a 5-minute conversation. I mean, we could have gone way more into Baywatch. That was a whole other, it's like Baywatch, Meisner, which way do we...
Right? But my dating life, that's a whole chapter in and of itself.
We'll save that for part 2. But I'm real curious to see, and aside from the stereotypical maybe hard work, or maybe this is the answer, out of all the actors that you've ever coached, seen, worked with, what is that quality or qualities that has separated the ones that really are the ones?
It's so funny. I've had people at the school who were so insanely talented and just went, and other people who beat themselves up but were relentless in how hard they worked. And when I tell you relentless, I mean relentless. Jamie Brown, who's now Jamie Allman, she's married to Marshall Allman. I had her from beginning at Playhouse West all the way through. I would say in the top, and I've been teaching and coaching now for 33 years. She's in the top 3 of hardworking. An unparalleled work ethic. And, you go to her IMDb and, she's worked nonstop her entire career. Working actor. I bet you have to look her up to see who I'm talking about,
Yeah,
right?
I have no idea who that
Working
is.
actor all the way through. She was the neighbor in The Notebook. She was the pretty neighbor that he starts seeing, right? She's extraordinary, but she makes demands on herself. And to me, it's funny. This is a crazy story. So for years, for 14 years, I trained in karate with Billy Blanks. And I went in the morning before going to teach at Playhouse, and I went back at night. And in the early mornings for a very long period of time, I worked out with Wayne Gretzky and Shaquille O'Neal. This is when they weren't, I'm pretty sure it was their off season. We'd get there at 5 a.m. And I knew Wayne for years because all the athletes watch soap operas because they train in the morning, then they go back to their hotel and rest and relax before they have to get to the stadium. So they watch soaps. So they would all come, especially in New York. I met everybody. So I've known Wayne and Janet forever. So Bob and Jeff had just asked me to start teaching, and I'm working out with Wayne and Shaq. And I'm like, you guys, I'm going to be a coach. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm so excited. I can't wait to teach this. I'm just so excited. I'm getting books on John Wooden. I'm going to be just such a great coach. And I just can't wait. And Wayne's sitting there and he's laughing. I said, I'm going to inspire people. They're going to work so hard. And he's laughing. I said, what are you laughing about? I thought he was laughing at me. He goes, Holly, you cannot teach work ethic. You either have it or you don't. And I was like, no, there's no way. I don't believe you. I disagree. You can inspire people. You can motivate people. He goes, you can, but they have to want to be motivated and they have to want to be inspired and they have to have a work ethic. And I can say 33 years later that he was 100% right. I do not play God because I've seen other teachers look and go, oh God, this person can't be taught, or they're not very talented, or they're weird, or they're this, or they're that. I'm not saying Playhouse people. I'm just saying people in general. And I have seen people, it's like I don't know if you've seen the Tom Brady documentary. It's called The Brady Six. It's all the guys that were picked before him. And he says at the end, there's no measuring heart. And he's absolutely right. If someone has a fire in them, they will succeed. I've seen it too many times where that fire is there and it has propelled them into working hard. And I've watched it over and over and over. A lot of people think they're working hard. There's a difference. And I've watched people really who I would have never in a million years gone, wow, what? and be extraordinary, really extraordinary. And those were the most, they didn't come in, with all sorts of confidence. Very often they didn't have confidence, but they had heart and desire. Kind of like you two. But
this is motivational. Like you're pumping me up.
yeah, it's there, and that's all it takes is the flame. Now, the key to this, and I say this to people all the time, with longevity, this is the hard part. When you first are in LA, oh, I've been here a year. I'm an intermediate. I'm here. I'm there. I booked this guest star. I got some luck. It's the long road. That's the scary part, because all that matters is you don't let that flame go out. It's going to be a little ember. And as long as you stoke it, it will come back roaring, but you can't let it go out. That is my other advice for new people. That flame that brings you to this, or to anything for that matter, it can't go out. The minute it's out, you're dead. So anything, sometimes you have to get out of your own way and maybe go do an act of service, because it's so about us. Being an artist, it's so about you. And often when that flame is really, struggling, go volunteer. Go volunteer. Watch what happens to your heart. Watch what happens to your humanity, and you're going to get ideas, and it's going to make you grow, and you're going to go, oh, wow, wait a minute. This gives me, it's not to get an idea for a script, but you might, a conversation you have with somebody. But what happens to you is your heart fills up. When your heart fills up, that's your creativity. That's where all your creativity exists. Not here, it's here. So when you stoke that, but you often sometimes need to step aside and go volunteer, or go help a family member, or help a friend in need. You sometimes have to go about it that way, so you don't get into your own little world of, oh, my world, my acting, me, 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 me. You sometimes need to step out of that. But that flame, man, and you got to have every trick in the book to keep that flame lit. I mean, I had days where it was just like, oh my God, I can't do this one more day. I just can't. And I can't lose one more gig. I can't get, there was a point once where I had 9 commercial, network national commercial avails in a row, 9, and didn't get them. And it was like, fuck this, you just don't know, you just don't know. So, I had a client up for a huge movie, huge. And I can't talk about it, but they were bringing in hair and makeup, because the movie was based on somebody, and just really, doing everything they could for the odds to be in their favor, to turn in their best work. And in the movie, the person ages. So they said, well, wait, we don't think they can play younger. So I found an old play for them to be younger. Well, we don't think they can play older. I found another old play. I wanted them to see this person, not scenes from movies. I wanted it to be stuff that nobody'd ever seen. They end up loving this person and start sending them the scripts. So this was like a 4-month process of sending in tapes. It was a shit ton of coaching, and probably 10 total tapes, callbacks, script, all this stuff. This person gets down to the wire, them and 2 others, and then they don't get it. And we get that news when they're at my house coaching on something else. And we're like, fuck you, so-and-so, about the producer. Fuck, we're screaming, we're crying, we're out of our minds, because I feel it just as badly with my actors. I'm screaming. Well, the producer was also producing another project and saw all these tapes. And this person got an even bigger project just from seeing those tapes. So that's what I'm saying. Like, if I was brand new to LA and I was that person, I would have been on a bus back to Williston, North Dakota, just saying, fuck you, LA, fuck you, movies, and fuck you, producers and casting and all of you. You can't, because you just don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen. That's what's crazy about it, and that's what's exciting about it. You have to learn to love how fucked up it is. And once you have that paradigm shift and enjoy volunteering and being and stoking your flame with friends and movies and movie nights and play readings and creating stuff, it will take on its own life. It will. I promise you. I've watched it. I've lived it myself. And back then we did not it was a lot harder to do than it is now, But god dang, we had so much fun. And those people are still my close friends. We've been through it all. That's why I'm still around the school. Can't get rid of me.
What a ride, huh?
I have a cousin. It's weird. People are starting to die now, which you don't think about when you're younger. But my cousin was 79. She was like the oldest out of all the first cousins. And she died in her sleep. And all my siblings were like, oh my God, this is so sad. And it's like the first person out of everybody. And I was like, 79, that's a damn great ride. B, she died in her sleep. I said, if I die tonight in my sleep, nobody, I don't want to, but nobody feels sorry. I have literally done everything I wanted to do. I'm still doing it. I'm having a blast. There are times where you have no money. There are times you have tons of money. There are times you have no work and then you have work and you're having to choose between gigs. It's crazy. You can't predict this shit. And don't try. You literally have to go for the ride. And I have zero regrets and zero fucks about anything that has happened to me. None. And I wish this could have been my attitude 30 years ago. I wouldn't have put myself through so much.
Well, and you've given another huge gift, because I'm going to get painted up on that wall. You have to learn you have to learn to love how fucked up it is. Holly Gagnier.
Yes!
That's gold. Yeah, you really do. You really do.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
It's perfect. It's kind of insane if you were to just tell somebody, this is the process of trying to get a gig. If you move to LA, this is all the stuff. They'd never come, right? It's like a little kid with a dream saying, I want to go to the Olympics. And you were like, well, you're going to be in the gym every day and have to go to school and have to do this and. Instead of going, shit, yeah, let's do this then. You got the fire. Let me be your. When I was little, they poured that shit on the cart charcoals and then we would eat the food. That flame stuff. Remember, you guys are too young.
Oh, like on a charcoal grill?
Barbecued, yeah. You had the charcoal grill and they had this stuff that's poison that they poured on it to make the flames, and then they'd put the burgers.
Oh,
it's like
shit.
we were eating that shit. But I will be your flame stoker, You have to. And you have to have friends that are, and you have to have your little community, even if it's 2 people. It doesn't have to be a lot. It has to be solids. You need a solid.
Well, Holly, this has been beyond incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the last word before we get out of here. But if people want to get a hold of you, follow you, find you, where are the best places for them to go?
I'm on Instagram, Holly underscore Gagnier, Gagnier. You can DM me there for coaching. Facebook, Holly Gagnier. You can, I'm pretty easy. I'm all over the internet to get a hold of for coaching. I'm easy to find. And you could always reach out to Playhouse West and they'll connect you to me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well,
I have a studio in my home. I tape you. I tape and coach virtually. Do it all. But if you are an actor and you're in LA, at least try and come and see what's up at Playhouse West, because there are a million things always going up that are so good. Plays, scene nights, all kinds of stuff. It's fun.
And this will for sure come out before How to Fight Loneliness. So you want to plug
That'll
that one more
be,
time?
there are several in August, September, and October coming up very soon. So go to the website, because I don't even know which days who's doing what. I have such big casts that some days they're not available and some days we're making the calendar right now.
Okay.
We'll see what happens. It's scary.
But it's fun, right?
It's so fun. It's fun for me because I feel like I'm paying it forward. And, when I was acting, my daughter is really wise and she's kind of watched it all over the years. The actors, me teaching, me working, all of it. And I was talking to her one day and I was like, with acting, I don't really feel like I made any kind of difference in the world at all. Okay, so people laughed at comedies and cried at dramas, but I don't feel like I made any kind of contribution. I had in my head that I was going to be a doctor at some point. And she said, "But Mom, you're making people's dreams come true." And I was like, she's like, "You're teaching, you're bringing people's dreams to reality for them." And, I lost it. I was, I'm paying it forward. I love it, but I never really thought about the responsibility of someone putting, and I do take it, you guys have had me as a teacher, I take it seriously, but to have someone say, "I'm putting my dreams in your hands, I trust you," is huge. And then watching it happen is, I lose my shit when people text me and tell me they booked something. I go crazy. It's so fun. It is really fun. So come find us. We're here. I'll leave the light on for you.
That's amazing. And Holly, this has been fantastic. We'll
Thank
have to do
you.
a part 2.
Oh, I would love
Talk
it.
about all the other stuff and more.
I would love it.
Okay.
I'd absolutely love it.
I always give the guests the last word. You've already given us so much. It can be as deep or as shallow as you want. What would you like to leave us with?
No regrets. Don't wait. Don't wait. And I also would suggest, creatives have no expiration date. They don't have a draft date they don't have an Olympic date. They just you can kind of go along. I would say make goals and have a structure every day and have goals set for the week, the month, the year of what the plan is. They might get attained. They might not. You might do more, right? This year my goal was 1 play. I don't know how many I've done so far. So have a bit of a plan and some goals so that you're not just floundering and going along. That I would say that. That'll also keep your flame lit.
Perfect. I love it. Well, Holly Gagnier,
Thanks
thank you
for having me. Sam, Eric, you guys are the sweetest.
Hi, everyone. Sam Dever, the Sam Dever Podcast here, and I just want to thank you for checking out this episode. To watch and listen to future episodes, be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@thesamdeverpodcast. Thank you so much. See you soon.